All right, BobalosRex here, and today you can tell from the title, Lore Rant. This is the working title. We'll see if this is actually the title. Haranir, the missing link, or we're gonna talk about it. So now that everyone has seen the revelation, right? I'm not sure if people are gonna go back and watch my 12.0.7 video on this, because this is what that was about. But we're going to talk about the revelation, right? What does it mean? Why are we getting this? What is the point? Because people are asking so many questions. So I'm just going to go through a lot of these questions and answer them to the best of my ability. And we're going to go over some tweets real quick. All right. So first off, this is a dev. I like this dev. This dev is cool. So don't go after them. If you're going after the devs, I'm not for it at all. But we're gonna go over these tweets so everyone can be on the same page about the revelation, right? The only reason, all right, we are going over these tweets is so that we can all be on the same page about the revelation. So we got a question from Noble to this dev, Boogly Woogly, Keith Riley, Co. right here. So Noble was saying, greetings. With the new cutscenes and stories, a question popped up. Visually, it looks like the Dark Trolls are no longer part of the evolutionary chain with the Night Elves. Is that intentional retcon, or did the Haranir evolve into the Did the Haranir evolve into Dark Trolls into Night Elves? So Noble is trying to sort the evolutionary chain like a lot of us are, right? Ever since the Haranir have been brought in, people are trying to sort out the chain. And we are going to talk about, you know what? We might as well get into it right now, because I do want to get to this understanding. So what is a species? All right. And WoW, it can mean, it kind of means the same thing, but what is a species? Well, in real life, a species, if to be a different species from another animal, you can't interbreed, right? Which, since there are some mixes, so you got ligers, you got lions and tigers, so they can kind of mix. So that means on the evolutionary line, they'd be very close together. All right. Same thing with donkeys and mules. But if we go back into human evolution, so let's just go real quick to Neanderthals, because I just want to break down something that I've learned about. So, human species, Homo sapiens, right? If you want to break down our full name, because of how modern species work, we would be considered Homo sapiens sapien, right? Most people just cut off the second one because there ain't no other sapiens around, right? But this distinction, Homo sapiens sapien, is to signify the difference modern humans are to that original sapien, right? Because we are still Homo sapiens, but think about the amount of time has passed, the stuff. We're still the same species, but things are different, all right? So it's Homo sapiens sapien. Now we have Homo neanderthalis, which turns out to be more of a subspecies. All right, so you would consider them Homo sapien neanderthalis. All right, and one point I want to get at, right, is think about this, right? So we call that Homo sapien neanderthalis, and we Homo sapiens sapien, right? If, all right, Neanderthals had won out, would we be calling it Homo neanderthal sapien, Homo neanderthal neanderthalis? That's the thing about terminology, right? The species that lives will most likely, and especially into when you're getting really close to these barriers between species, is my point. The one who lived will put their name first, is what I'm saying, right? The one who survives, right, the ancestors of these species will most likely put their name first, right? And will call their ancestors themselves, right? Versus something else, right? So a troll ancestor would be a proto-troll, right? A Haranir ancestor would be a proto-Haranir to the Haranir, even if, right, the proto-Haranir would be a troll, right? Or a proto-troll would be a Haranir, or those things would be in the middle, right? So that's what I want to get through. So let's go through this. So he wanted to clarify, so this is going to be a long post. So this will be a longer post because I'm seeing a lot of confusion, and I hope this helps. I'm only going to discuss the lore from an in-world perspective. We got to remember, in-world perspective, out-of-game world perspective is different. Because I'm not here to create lore on social media. So none of this is lore. He isn't trying to create lore. He is just clarifying what we see in-game. All right? And yeah, he just says, I want to clarify what the in-game characters presented and what they know. All right? The cinematic is an in-world Haranir presentation, right? The Hagar and the elders get together and they're like, we drew up some paint. We're doing a presentation. All right? From the Haranir's POV via the Haranir vision. It is not Blizzard's presentation on the absolute truth of the Haranir /elf /troll genealogy. Though I'm sure some of you would enjoy BlizzCon panel titles as such. I would, but I do like the I like figuring it out. All right, I wouldn't like a presentation. I would like figuring it out. So I have enjoyed this. Orwena says that the Haranir visions may contain missing or inaccurate details, but they cannot lie. Alright, so details will be missing. Okay, and somewhat be inaccurate, but the overall message, right? If we do these world soul memories, because I'm going to talk about world soul memories, we'll just talk about them right now. So, take a world soul memory, right? What we did, right? When we did that, you got to remember, it's given us a hint at what this time in Azeroth's past is, right? But you got to remember, it's gameplay, and it's kind of being jumbled up, right? You can't say that the cartel wars consisted of these three people, and then these robots, and then these rocks, and it was all right here doing that. No. There's game limitations, and the vision is just trying to get the vibe, right? We're getting the vibe. What is the message? What is the message the vision is trying to portray? That is all that is true, right? What we see in the vision could be a little inaccurate, and there's going to be details that are going to be missing, all right? But the message is going to be accurate. That is what the visions do. World Soul memories and the Haranir paint memories as well. Because if you do the quest with the paint, they put the Ondas and the ingredients, and the first Zoroaster used it to pass down their history, right? That is how they write. That is their written history. Alright, so the Haranir believe the general idea of the vision is the truth. That there were ancient Haranir. To them, they would call them ancient Haranir, because to them, it would always be Haranir. They would always call them Haranir. Stayed on the surface, and they became the modern trolls and elves. Alright? That was their history that they were told. That is the basis for the "We are one people" statement to the attendees. Because again, the revelation, alright, is to basically be like, yo, elves, trolls, look at us Haranir. We're related. We're proof. We are living proof that the trolls and elves are related. The Haranir basically show that, and they're like, hey. And it's funny, too, because people say the Haranir think they're so smart and stuff, but that's the thing. They are naive. They're isolationists. The elders think they know it all, and they're naive. Even Orwena is naive. She's like, yo, if we tell the trolls and the elves they're related, right, any beefs will be squashed. Which is funny, because here's the thing, and this is what I think is interesting, right? So, Blood Elves have a beef with the Amani, right? Okay? Blood Elves don't have a beef with the Zandalari or the Darkspear. Well, they shouldn't, right? The Darkspear are part of the Horde. The Blood Elves joined the Horde. The Darkspear have helped the Horde, alright? And now the Zandalari are part of the Horde. But Isle of Thunder, some stuff is brought up. I just did an Argentina where it's brought up, Isle of Thunder. The Blood Elves were fighting Zandalari there. So, you know, the Blood Elves have had beef with Zandalari, but it's like, yo, you're a part of the Horde. The Darkspear and the Zandalari are a part of the Horde. You're a part of the Horde, Blood Elves. But you have Lothamar siding with Varisa to talk shit about the trolls in the Horde. I know he's talking about Amani, but it's like, the Amani used to be in the Horde, bro. And he ain't saying Amani, he's just saying troll. And it's just like, Zakan and Rokan and Talanji are right there. Umbric is more understanding, and he's an Alliance member. So this whole freaking reveal was sending me crazy. But if you look at it, it matches how these people feel. But the whole point of the Haranir's reveal was like, yo, we're gonna show them and it's gonna bring them together. Nope. Even the Horde being a thing with trolls and elves, the elves still act all snooty. And that has been, as a Blood Elf player for a long time, that has been my one annoyance with Blood Elves. You know, it's in their character, but it's not mine, isn't, bro. Mine is an archaeologist. He put the pieces together. He put the pieces with Night Elves to Trolls to Blood Elves, and he was just like, or from Trolls to Night Elves to Blood Elves, and he was just like, oh, well, this is all wrong. We took their land. Like, my Blood Elf is base. But that's the thing. Not Blood Elves are, and not apparently, most of the in-game characters, it's not common knowledge that it's common knowledge that Night Elves go into Blood Elves, right? We all know Night Elves, Highborn, Blood Elves, yeah, they're related, right? But the relation from Trolls to Night Elves wasn't really known by everybody. It was known by archaeologists. They're really digging in the details. But it'd be funny to see, like, Bran with that information be like, yo, Night Elves, you're related to Trolls. And Night Elves being like, Night Elf scholars being like, no. We are hiding that information. Nope, fake news, right? And it'd be so funny to see Night Elves being like, mainstream Dwarven archaeology says that we are related to Trolls. Well, that's fake. Night Elves actually come from an ancient elven race. I was like, oh, well, you know, we got Haranir now, so you can want to believe that, because the Haranir say they come from Haranir. All right, but let's get back into it. So, Talanji here, he also brings up Talanji. Talanji also says they have libraries that speak of the earliest days of the Night Elves and the Dark Trolls, but she admits there may be gaps in their knowledge as well. So what is the truth? So, at the end of the day, the only reason I wanted to bring that up is to basically get the gist, right? What was the point of the revelation? To basically confirm that elves and trolls are related, and the Haranir confirmed that. Now, I have WoW Wiki brought up, because I do want to talk about this. So, this is according to the Haranir, right? They want to put the Haranir at the top. I don't think that's not 100%. Because right now, if you have Dark Trolls here, we don't know. At this point, Haranir and Trolls have a common ancestor. And whatever that is the original species, okay? Is it Troll? Is it Haranir? It's both, is what it is, okay? Now, what do you want to call it? If you're a Troll, you're going to call it a Troll. If you're a Haranir, you're going to call it a Haranir. That to me is the basics at the end of the day, where we stand, right? Okay, until we want to dig into these Zandalari libraries, all right? If Talanji then goes into the Zandalari libraries, because we've established that the Haranir. Okay, so let's get into it. So Haranir troll. We've established what the revelation, what it means, right? To establish that Haranir, troll, and night elves and elves, Haranir, troll, and elves all come from a common ancestor, right? That is the basics, right? Haranir say it's Haranir. The dev confirms they're gonna say it's Haranir. Does that mean dark trolls aren't right? No, they're gonna say it's trolls. The one group that can't say it's night elves, elves are like, well, I guess we can lean into the Haranir. That's all the elves can do, is try to lean into the Haranir if they want to, get as far away from trolls. But again, it's like, we're bringing up the blood elves. That's what annoys me about Lothamar. He's siding with just alliance member, a previous alliance member, possibly still an alliance member, Varisa, right? She lives in, if she's gonna stay in Silvermoon, is she still a part of the alliance, right? The lines are so blurred, and it's so frustrating as a Horde member, right, to see that. And I think that's kind of what they're pulling on, right? Some of the elves are getting upset. We do see Zul'Jan. Zul'Jan does get the most upset, in a way, in that cutscene. But remember, the short story had Lothamar swinging on a troll. So in my opinion, Lothamar looks equally as bad, continues to look equally as bad, later on, in my opinion. And whatever goes on with Zul'Jan, we'll see. Y'all know, at least now, he goes off to the island, right? So he is led astray. So that is what that's gonna be. But at the end of the day, what does it mean for the Haranir? Are the Haranir the missing link? The thing about missing link in evolution is it's kind of a moot term, right? Because you can say, where is the link? Where does one thing end and another thing begin? And then, like, what if there's multiple links where you think there's just one? And then it's more like branches than links than chains. So in this way, I don't believe Haranir are the missing link. But Haranir, hard confirmed, trolls and elves are connected. And to me, that's what this is, what this was about. Confirming trolls, elves, and now Haranir are all connected. That's all that means. Now, I'm going to talk about who I think is first in a little bit. But at the end of the day, that's what it means. You can think the Haranir come first, and at the end of the day, they could be called Haranir, the proto-ancestor. But now I'm going to get into it, though. Because I actually want to tell y'all, I think these are 100% the middle ground between night elves and trolls. I think they are tribal night elves. I think they would be the tribal night elves that would have existed even before, right? This could be even before the Zandalari Empire, right? I do think the Haranir and the Zandalari Empire would have existed at the same time. But Haranir would have been that mysterious dark trolls, right? And we could say, oh, well, we see other dark trolls. Those could be leftover Harati tribe, or not Harati tribe, like the Shadowtooth tribe, right? The dark trolls we know about, right? The Shadowtooth would have been different than the dark trolls back in the day. It's not like they would have stayed the same either, right? So they wouldn't have been down here. Again, if that is confirmed, if we do get this extra Zandalari troll confirmation, we could then find out that the Haranir did go through a lot of changes inside here. But if we look at their hands and stuff, I think it lends credence to the idea that the Haranir, as trolls developed across Kalimdor. Here, I want to bring up the map here. I did want to talk about this. So let's bring up the whole of Kalimdor, right? So we got, this would have been the whole of Kalimdor. Dragon Isle's up here, right? We do, in the War of the Scalebound, right? The Scaleborn, right? The Dragon Fight book. They talk about mortals from 2,000 years ago, and they were three-fingered. Okay? So, trolls 20,000 years ago. Alright? Again, why I think trolls are at top. You can believe Haranir are at the beginning too. Because again, either way, that's a common ancestor. Maybe Proto-Haranir had 3 fingers. Alright? And trolls would call them Proto-Trolls. You see, primordial trolls, primordial elves, primordial Haranir. At the end of the day, the terminology doesn't matter. But this original race, right, would have existed and probably had 3 fingers at 2,000 years ago, right? 20,000 years ago, my bad, 20,000, right? We get the Zandalari Empire as 16,000. So only 4,000 years. Those are tribes wandering. Boom, Zandalari Empire. Right? So we could honestly wonder, we could push that back. 30,000. Maybe these tribes were wandering around, right? And this would have been the War of the Scalebound born 20,000 years ago would have been when Timekeepers are still doing stuff. That's about when the tier stuff goes on. So Freya gets locked in, Mimiron, all them keepers get locked in. But we know when the Haranir set out, which would have been pre 20,000 years ago now. Okay. So that does lead credence to the Haranir wandering. But again, if you go back to the memory, think about it in game. The memory shows that it's Haranir. But it would show that it's Haranir to the Haranir. You see what I'm saying? It would show, because the message is about saying your ancestor, right? So to them, it is primordial. So it could have been trolls, these primordial trolls that are also wandering. But either way, these tribes were wandering, and 20,000 years ago, you have that. Then 4,000 years later, 16,000 years ago, Empire of Zandalar. And then the trolls, the Zandalari trolls, would begin writing and taking down their history. Alright? So, how long ago did the Haranir start painting? We learn about when they started painting and keeping their history too. So they started keeping their history. And then that is what we need to do now. Right? And if we are really going to continue this big historical conversation, we do really need the Zandalari histories, because the Haranir, like I said, are hard confirmations of elves to trolls, because the Haranir head to Hyjal and some stay behind. Alright? That the Haranir would call Haranir. That the Harati tribe of the Haranir, of these tribal night elves, tribal proto-trolls, tribal dark trolls, tribal Haranir, if you just want to call them Haranir, they split off and came down here. Alright? So we learn all that, started keeping their history, but here's the interesting part about that history of the Haranir, and why I think they are really that perfect middle ground, which is why gameplay-wise, if we break it down, that could be at the end of the day what Blizzard was going for. But the Haranir, when they came down here, didn't find their goddess, right? They hit berserking. The Haranir avoiding Freya, they had shadow meld. So even up there, they have the pieces, in my opinion, of Night Elf and Troll lineage. But now we look at their current racials, right? And at the end of the day, that's another part of why I say they're different than their past version. Because look, now they have crit, so that's from their rage, but you could say that came from berserking. This damage to subterranean predator, that was generated. This one with nature maybe came from the original Night Elves, but remember, if we look at modern Night Elves, they don't have a bonus to herbalism. Tauren do. So modern Night Elves have a little bit more connection to the moon, to nature, but a little bit more to magic as well, because of the highborn and whatnot. Alright. So they have changed from their past selves, and they are new things. Now, we learn that we still don't have hard confirmation. Troll Haranir, which came first, but we do have that hard confirmation of elves to trolls, or trolls to elves. Trolls to elves. Trolls and elves are linked. All right. Okay. Now, we have this story moving forward. Okay, with the lore, all this lore established in the game. All right, and part of me, at the end of the day, we could say, was Blizzard giving us the Haranir to basically say, here, not only is this established lore for elves and trolls connection, but now you can play half troll, half elf, right? Because whether or not you like it or not, whether or not you like the Haranir lore or not, this is given the RP option for people to do that, okay? And we can see that they gave, with the Arathi ears for humans, they gave humans the option to play Arathi, but it also gives them option to play half elf. Same thing with Kultirin. Now you can play a thick half elf, right? Now, how would half elf and half humans work? Again, if we talk about the speciation, that leads a lot of things, like where's the connection between elves and humans? And then you would think, where would the connection be? It's either Titanic or Curse of Flesh. Interesting. But then you have a half orc, half Draenei. But then you would be like, okay, well, that was magical. Because the orcs were made from the Titans, but what were the Draenei made from? Because at the end of the day, there's some magic involved too. So if we really want to get into the nitty-gritty of speciation, it would be hard, especially when magic's involved, because then you could see hard lines. Like, oh, well, this is when X happened and everything changed, right? So the term, the true history, again, will only matter if we find Zandalari history notes, we get more into it, or we get literal gospel text from Blizzard, like a Re-Chronicles. Because now we know the Chronicles even is subject to change with this living world, but I do think that that's why they want to establish stuff in game. And the established lore in game is trolls and elves are linked. Who came first? Haranir trolls? They'll let you decide, alright? My vote is for trolls, but that's me. I think some people want the Haranir to be there, and at the end of the day, whatever you call it doesn't matter. So, Primordial Haranir, Primordial Troll. If we go back in time and ask it, what would they call themselves? Maybe they won't say either. Okay? So, one thing I do want to get out, though, is why the Haranir? You could say so people could play this, so people could be mad, so someone can self-insert another race. I think it's cool what they did with the Haranir, and at the end of the game day, the why is to establish that missing link. I do think that is, even though I wouldn't call it that. But there is another reason why. And that reason is the Titans. I still stand by my theory. I think the Titans influenced the elves and maybe even the trolls, because the trolls built on Titanic ruins. The Night Elves literally learned the Titan words for the land. The Haranir, though, they said no. They said, Titan, no, no. The Titans did that to her. And now we will hide and do nothing. You know, they don't know how to do... They aren't making great decisions the whole time. But the decision now is to do something. And that first something be saying, hey, trolls, elves, y'all are related. They thought it was good. It turned out to start a whole patch. But what's in store? I do think the Haranir important. I still like the Haranir. I've always liked the Haranir ever since they came in. Even maybe a little less now that they're not Quillbore. But to me, they are that primordial elf troll, whatever you want to call it, Haranir. That is that holdout. That is that locked away in this Lifeland adjacent Azeroth, like terrarium. I called it like a terrarium, right? A life terrarium in Azeroth, right? And just stuck here to live. And I think they're cool. Could it just be because of all the customizations? Maybe, you know, maybe. But I still like them. I still think they're cool. And they do have some unique stuff going on with the paint. They have their own kind of Demon Hunter-esque type characters with the Shulka and the Almdust. And I think the Haranir, the trolls, and the elves. Because why would the goddess lead Orwena to bring all her children, the trolls, the elves, the Tauren, you know, too. We need to bring in the Tauren. But yeah, I think this story is going to culminate in Azeroth bringing together all her children. Some people are worried Azeroth's going to look like Haranir as opposed to Troll. But I'm going to be real. Azeroth, if she's going to look like anything, she's going to have her own model. Okay. And at the end of the day, what is the difference between a female troll and a Haranir female? Those two models, some people even use it, right, to be in a stand-in, right? If you want to do... WoW never really gave us the ugly female trolls. They still have some of the pretty looks. So at the end of the day, that Azeroth is either going to be the shape-changing Azeroth thing that we saw in the one short story, or it's probably going to have a female troll-ish, but maybe it's that middle-of-the-ground Night Elf Haranir-ish, but that would make sense, right? Because the common ancestor or whatever. And like I said, it would be high-res, you know, until we get some higher-res troll customizations, you know, it would look more like a Haranir. So I'm not afraid of that or anything, but we'll have to see where it all goes. All right? And I, for one, am glad we got clarification, even though that's kind of... I wanted a solid answer. And we're still left with the question, Haranir or Troll? And they want to leave it at that question. Blizzard has explicitly said they want us to question Haranir or Trolls. Who came first? Where are Dark Trolls in on this? All right? So that's where we're at. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.